How's life? If you're considering flirting with VR and AR, this is the story of how this tech nerd tried VR for the first time and had some pleasant surprises, but also some of my fears came true. So let's just rewind a bit of an overview. So what is the MetaQuest 3S? Well, it's a VR AR headset that's priced at about 299 euros at launch. It's gone up a bit to 329 now, I noticed. But as a curious techie, for me, it was the perfect price to step into VR or AR. It replaces the 2, which is the older model, and the replacement is basically the guts. It upgrades the guts so you get better processor and stuff like that, but it keeps the visual display, the Fresnel lenses as they're called, and the MetaQuest 3 is still the highest end option in this list. Now I got the base 128 gig storage model, and that is plenty. I was a bit afraid that I'd run out of space, but it's so far held up fine, and I've been downloading apps left, right and center and games as well. I also got a free game at launch, the Arkham Shadow, and I think you still get that if you buy this new. Now, I am a first-time VR user, just to kind of set the context of where I'm coming from. And for me, I think one of the biggest issues with the headset was the comfort. The strap that comes with the MetaQuest 3S, you can adjust it on top of your head and at the back. And after a lot of trial and error over the last 3 weeks or so, I've come to the conclusion that a bit loose is probably the best setting for me. So it kind of hangs a bit lower and it's not very tight at the back. Now, I've heard that there are other better straps out there, but I ain't spending more than I have to on this. This is for me just an experiment, a fun tech product to try. What about that feeling of being seasick? I think a lot of you guys must be wondering about that. I do feel seasick after a bit of VR gaming, and it's not an age thing either. I've always had this. I remember the first time I tried VR was at some sort of expo, and they had this gaming rig. We were driving Formula 1 cars using VR. Oh my God, it was 5 seconds before I had to get out of that thing. So if you're somebody who's sensitive to dizziness, then the gaming thing will remain, unfortunately. Meta, if you want to test with somebody who has dizziness but still wants to give VR a shot, hit me up. I'm a good tester. But games like Arkham Shadow do have modes where it's less intense, and it's actually fine for me when I'm not playing games. Now, Fresnel lenses that are in this have 3 adjustment points. So it goes really wide, a bit in the middle and a bit closer to each other. So that kind of adjusts to where your eyes are. And I use setting 2, but I have a feeling if I could adjust it a bit finer, you know, not just 3 points, but like a sliding scale, I'd probably have a better experience. Unfortunately, that's only available on the 3. Since it has a smooth adjustment, these only come with Fresnel lenses. And speaking of Fresnel lenses, let's talk a little bit about the visuals, because that's really important. I'll be upfront with you as somebody who's tried tech a lot, not VR tech, but tech in general. This is pixelated as I even had the Axial Air Pro 2 glasses for, you know, consuming content. That's not a fully immersive experience, but that was much better resolution than the MetaQuest 3S is. Let me talk a little bit about the hardware itself. The hardware is actually quite nice. It's very plasticky. The controllers, I think, work better than the hand tracking. I think they're much more precise and they track much faster. I dropped one of the controllers in a kind of a pot of water at the sink. Don't ask what I was doing there. I had my thing on and pass-through was off, and I didn't have it around my wrist. So if you're using these, please always wrap them around your wrist. It kind of got totally immersed in water and started freaking out after that. It didn't work. But now 3 days later, that controller works perfectly. So I think at least they're quite well built. So I'm happy to see that. And you get kind of this, it comes in a box with this plastic thing. And this is actually also a stand. So you can use this as a stand to keep both your controllers and the headset. So that's something nobody told me, but it's good to know if you're a first-time user. And speaking of, what can you do with these things? Well, you can play games. So the free Arkham Shadow game that you get is a pretty cool game. I'm not much of a gamer myself, but I kind of showed it to my nephew and he was really impressed and he was having a lot of fun with it. So that's nice. I think personally, mixed reality games are more fun where you're in your environment, you know. And the good thing about this compared to the 2 is it has full color pass-through. Now the pass-throughs, okay, but at least you can see your environment in real time and the games interact with those environments. If you have a table, you know, monsters bounce off of the table and stuff like that. So I think mixed reality games are more fun, but I'm generally not much of a gamer. Word Feud is the only game I really play. So what else can you do? You can have social experiences. So Horizon Worlds is kind of like these virtual worlds you can explore, and There are real people there, at least they seem like real people. They could be AI now, we can't tell the difference anymore. But there were people talking, interacting. So if you're somebody who doesn't like the real world, you can have social experiences in the VR world. Anyway, that is again not for me. I'm not at a stage in life where I need to go and make friends on Horizon Worlds. What else? What is for me is media consumption. I watch Netflix, YouTube, the regular streaming stuff. And Big Screen VR, the app, is a game changer. I watched Agatha All Along from Disney Plus on Big Screen VR, and it was a lot of fun. Now, again, I said the display is not super high resolution, so you're not going to get like a very crisp picture. But that whole sense of, I was sitting on my couch and I had set it up like I was in a grand movie theater. It really felt like I was there. When I turned around, I could see seats, I could change where I was sitting. It was a really, really cool experience. I think that for me is one of the killer apps for VR, AR, and this Meta Quest 3S. What else? Well, PC VR. If you have a PC that supports PC VR, you can do a bunch of stuff. I don't have a compatible PC. I just use Mac, so what I could do was use Quest Remote Desktop. So I could interact with the desktop using my mouse and keyboard. And here's a little bit of a clip about that. All right, so this is how the Remote Desktop app works on the Meta Quest 3S. And it's kind of nice, but also kind of annoying at the same time. So to begin with, let me start with the good things. And you can add up to 3 displays, which is a really handy feature. So in terms of screen real estate, I'm good. I can also go to this full screen view, which is kind of like my Horizon world. And that's me in the mirror there. Hello. And I think very usable to view content and to interact with the web page and things like that. This is my problem with this. Now, again, I can make this as big or small as I want. So I can get a pretty good sized couple of desktops, and it can be, look, this is huge. Like this is about this big. Okay, this is the first monitor and this one is that big. So these are massive monitors, and I can use my Mac system to work with it. The problem I have is this, it's the controller. So I have my Oculus controllers here. As you can see, this is the left and this is the right controller. And I cannot use a controller to interact with any of the contents of these screens. So for example, I can't scroll, I can't move around this window, I can't change these settings, nothing. So I have to use my physical keyboard and mouse. And while the mouse is still doable, without seeing anything. So if I go into pass through, I can see the mouse and I can, move it around, I can maximize it, things like that. But to use the keyboard is a bit of a pain, and I have to really look down, and I cannot use this keyboard in an immersed view. And the second irritating thing is that I can only full screen one of these at the same time. So I would love to tile these in a nice way, and they could be tiled or they could be, both could be curved, like one big ass curved monitor, but I can't do that. Now, I thought that was the end. That's as much as I could do, but I kept working on it, researching, and it turns out there is something called Meta Horizon Workrooms that is built on top of Quest Remote Desktop, and it helps you work by also seeing your keyboard, which you could not do in the remote desktop. So have a look at that. All right, and then we have Meta Horizon Workrooms, which is what I was looking for forever. So essentially, Horizon Workrooms does what I said the remote desktop cannot do. So it kind of makes these two things full screen. And you do have a mode here where you can, let me check. Yes, you have immersive mode. So you see a virtual environment. You have desk pass through. So I've set up my desk to see the physical keyboard, and you have full pass through. So if I do desk pass through now, you can see I can just keep these things down. Whoopsie. And what it does is I am in this virtual world. I do get to see my keyboard quite easily. I can see my controllers as well. And I can just, there's also a little clock there, which is kind of cute. This is exactly the experience I want when I'm using. I would be careful of moving around too much because it looks like you're in a virtual world. But for example, I know I have my DJI Pocket 3 standing here, so it could cause some damage. You see, there is an immersed camera, but there is no camera for the Meta Quest. You can use the microphone on the Meta Quest. So if you're taking video calls, you are going to look a bit like an idiot. It's not like the Apple persona you get, but I think this is a very good compromise for, working with remote desktops and to be productive. You can also have a full pass through if you want to be safe, just to just to kind of see your environment. It's a bit too messy for me, so I'm just going to do desk pass-through. The Meta Horizon Worlds is what you need if you want to work. Don't use remote desktop. So what's the conclusion? Well, it's for me a really fun experience to try something new. And the thing about VR, they say, is you have to experience it to feel it. I would use this now and again if I'm just by myself to watch content or if I want to work. But the fatigue is real, for me at least. I can do max an hour or 2 hours if I'm watching really engaging content. Personally, I think there's not enough grown-up stuff I can do on it. Still feels very much like a gamer-first device. But big screen VR and Horizon Work has added stuff which I can use. And now this dizziness, car sickness things happen to me. Maybe they happen to you, maybe they don't. But that's something to keep in mind if you want to game a lot on these. I'd rather game on a flat screen where I don't feel like, I'm kind of going to throw up. Media consumption is the killer app for me. There is other stuff you can do, and I don't know, if this video takes off, maybe we'll investigate some more things that the MetaQuest 3S can do. But that's what I have so far. If you want to take the jump into, AR, VR, and you can't afford an Apple Vision Pro, or you basically don't want to spend that much, even if you can afford it, I think this is a great place to start. Personally, now if I look back, I would have probably spent a bit more money to get the thing with a better display, because the display is everything, right? Sure, the guts are good, the pass-through is good, everything. I would have probably bought the MetaQuest 3, and if you're gonna give it any, decent length of time, get the MetaQuest 3, I'd say, because if you get a sharper display and those lenses are just better, I think that might give you a much better experience. But for me, for now, this is fine. If I'm using this for 6 months regularly, I might upgrade to the 3. For now, end of life.